It was close to midnight when the diner lights started to hum, flickering like they were tired too. The smell of burnt coffee clung to the air, and the clock above the register ticked too loud for a place that was supposed to feel alive. I was wiping the counter, pretending not to count the minutes until closing, when the door swung open and a man stumbled in. He was tall, dressed in black, his hand pressed hard against his side. For a moment, I thought he was drunk, until I saw the blood. He chose the last booth near the window, half hidden in shadow, his body slumped like it could no longer hold him up. I remember the metallic scent that followed him, sharp and silent, filling the empty space between us. My heart raced as I looked toward the kitchen, hoping someone else had seen him. But the cook was gone, and my manager was counting tips, pretending the world outside the glass did not exist. "Do not go near him," my manager whispered when I called him over. "He looks like trouble. We do not need police or blood on the floor. Let him deal with his own mess." Trouble. That was the word everyone used when they meant someone else's problem. I looked back at the booth and saw his fingers trembling against the table, blood soaking through a white dress shirt that might have once been expensive. He lifted his head, and for a split second, our eyes met. There was pain there, yes, but not the kind that begged for mercy. It was the kind that fought to stay hidden. I should have listened to my manager. I should have gone back to cleaning tables. But there was something in that silence, something that pulled at me stronger than fear. I grabbed the first aid kit from under the counter and walked over before my courage could change its mind. He looked up when I slid into the seat across from him. "You should walk away," he said, his voice low and calm, like he was trying to protect me from himself. "I will once you stop bleeding," I answered. My hands shook as I pulled a napkin from the dispenser, pressing it gently against his side. "What happened?" "Wrong place," he said after a pause. "Wrong people." Blood kept seeping through the fabric, hot and steady. His jaw tightened, but he did not move. His control scared me more than his injury. I had seen drunks, addicts, men who cried when they stubbed a toe. But this man bled like it meant nothing. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. "Because nobody else will." He laughed once, a quiet, humorless sound. "That is a dangerous habit." I did not know what he meant until I saw headlights flash outside. 2 cars idling across the street, engines running. My stomach dropped. Whoever he was running from, they were close. "Stay still," I whispered. "We have a back door." He nodded once. I took his arm and helped him up, his weight heavy against me. His clothes smelled of smoke and rain. When we reached the back hallway, I grabbed my coat from the hook and threw it over his shoulders. "You should not be doing this," he said, his voice rougher now. "Neither should you." He stared at me for a long second, like he was memorizing something. Then he stepped out into the night, his figure swallowed by the darkness between the streetlights. By the time I returned, my manager was waiting near the counter, arms folded, face pale with anger. "Do you know who that was?" he hissed. "No," I said honestly. "And I do not want to." He shook his head. "Then you are already in trouble. You think kindness keeps you safe? In this city, kindness kills." I wanted to argue, but my voice felt small. I just turned away, washing my hands again, even though the blood had already been rinsed off. The red water swirled down the drain, but the smell stayed on my skin. When I stepped outside later, the street was empty. Only the faint echo of tires against wet asphalt reminded me he had ever been there. I told myself it was over, that I had done a small good thing in a bad world. But as I walked home under the flickering streetlights, something in me knew I had just changed everything. That night, I could not sleep. Every sound outside my window felt like footsteps. Every car that passed made my chest tighten. Still, when I closed my eyes, all I could see were his eyes in that booth, cold, sharp, and strangely alive. I thought I saved a stranger that night. I did not know I had invited the devil into my life. The morning after felt too quiet, like the city was holding its breath. I barely slept, lying on my narrow bed, listening to sirens that faded in and out of the night. When I finally dragged myself to the diner, the air already smelled like burnt toast and bleach. The neon sign outside still flickered, but something in me knew it was the last time I would walk through that door as if I belonged there. The manager was waiting near the counter, a paper in his hand, eyes already sharp with judgment. He did not even let me clock in. "You can save yourself the trouble," he said. "You are done here." I stood still, the words echoing longer than they should have. "Done? For what?" "For being stupid," he said flatly. "For helping a man you should have stayed away from. You think this is some charity?" You think I can have police sniffing around because of your bleeding heart nonsense. I tried to speak, but my throat felt dry. He was hurt. I could not just. You could have minded your business, he interrupted, slamming the paper down. He was trouble. You brought that into my place. Do you have any idea who that man was? I shook my head. No. He never told me. Exactly. And that should tell you enough. He turned away, already bored with me. Behind him, the cook avoided my eyes, pretending to scrub the grill. I realized then that nobody would defend me, not even the ones who had laughed with me over midnight coffee and broken jukebox songs. To them, I was just the waitress who crossed the wrong line. I have worked here for 4 years, I said quietly. Never missed a shift. Never stole a thing. You know me. He looked up finally, his expression hard. I knew the girl who kept her head down. This one. His eyes flicked toward the door. This one I cannot trust. The words burned deeper than I expected. Trust. That was all I had ever tried to earn. When I walked out, the sun was barely up. The streets were still wet from rain, reflecting a pale, broken light. My reflection stared back at me from the diner window. Hair tied up, uniform stained, eyes empty. I looked like someone else's story. I walked for blocks, not knowing where I was going. My rent was due in 3 days. The few dollars in my pocket would not last a week. Every sound, the clatter of garbage cans, the hum of cars, felt louder than it should. The city always had a way of making you feel small, but that morning, it felt like it wanted me gone. At the bus stop, an old woman fed crumbs to pigeons. She smiled faintly at me. You look like someone who just got bad news. I guess I did, I said. Young people think doing the right thing will make the world kinder, she said softly. But the world has its own rules. I almost laughed. I am starting to learn that. The bus came and left, but I stayed there long after, staring at the empty street. I thought about that man, the stranger in the booth. The way he had looked at me, like he wanted to say something but stopped himself. I told myself it was over, that I would never see him again. But part of me wondered if he remembered my face, if he knew what his silence had cost me. By noon, I was back in my tiny apartment, the one-room kind where the walls hear every secret. I sat on the floor, still in my uniform, my name tag lying beside me. My hands smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee, but I could not wash away the feeling that I had done something irreversible. When the phone rang, I jumped. It was only a wrong number, but the sound rattled me. For a moment, I thought it might be him, the stranger, the one with the wound and the steady voice. I hated that the idea made my heart beat faster. Outside, the city moved on like nothing had changed. But I knew something had. Jobs were replaceable. Identities were not. The girl who used to play it safe had made a choice, and the world had punished her for it. I leaned against the window, watching people hurry by, each of them belonging somewhere. I had no place to be, no name that mattered to anyone. Just the echo of his voice in my head, low and deliberate, warning me that kindness was dangerous. They said he looked like trouble. They did not know trouble was looking for me. The third night after losing my job, I heard the sound of an engine idling outside my apartment window. It was slow, steady, almost patient. The kind of sound that does not belong on a quiet street where the loudest noise is usually a stray cat knocking over a trash can. I thought maybe it was a delivery truck or someone lost, but when I looked through the curtain, I saw the same black car that had been parked across the street earlier that day. Its windows were tinted so dark that the reflection of the streetlight danced on them like oil on water. For a moment, I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination chasing ghosts. But when the passenger window rolled down and I saw a familiar face in the dim glow, the man from the diner, my breath caught in my throat. He looked different now. No blood, no weakness, just that same quiet power that felt heavier than words. I stood frozen, my fingers still gripping the curtain. Then, through the half-open window, his voice came, calm, deep, and deliberate. "You should not stand near the window," he said. "Someone might mistake you for a target." The air seemed to leave the room. I did not know if he was joking or warning me, but either way, my legs started moving before my mind caught up. I slipped on my shoes, grabbed my coat, and went downstairs. Part of me knew it was foolish, walking toward the very thing that scared me. But curiosity has a way of swallowing reason. When I stepped outside, the car door opened before I could speak. He was there, leaning slightly against the doorframe, dressed in a dark suit this time. The night wind tugged at his collar, but his presence was so steady it made everything else around him feel small. "You should not be here," I said quietly, though my voice trembled. He studied me for a moment. You are right, he replied. But then again, you should not have helped me either. I crossed my arms, trying to look braver than I felt. If you are here to tell me I made a mistake, you are late. I already lost everything. Something in his expression softened, not quite regret, but something close. I know, he said. Your manager spoke to the police that night. He told them you were involved. I made sure they stopped asking questions. I blinked, unsure if I had heard him right. You what? He stepped closer, and for the first time, I noticed how controlled every movement of his was, like a man who had learned that even breathing could be dangerous. You helped me when you did not have to, he said. I repay my debts. I did not do it for a debt, I said, my voice low. I know, he replied. That is why it matters. There was something in the way he said it, not gratitude, not exactly, but acknowledgement, like he saw through me in a way no one else ever had. I wanted to ask who he really was, what he was running from that night, but the words stayed trapped behind my teeth. Why are you here? I asked finally. To make you an offer, he said. You need work. I need someone I can trust for a few simple things. Discreet things. The word trust echoed like a challenge. You think you can trust me? He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that does not reach the eyes. You already proved that I can. I hesitated, glancing past him at the car, sleek, black, and cold as midnight. And if I say no? His silence was not threatening, but it was heavy. Then you go back upstairs, pretend we never met, and hope the world forgives you faster than it usually does. The chill in the air crept down my spine. There was no direct threat in his tone, no raised voice, but the unspoken truth was there. People like him did not offer twice. Why me? I asked. He looked past me toward the darkened building, then back into my eyes. Because you looked at me like I was human when no one else did. You do not get that kind of honesty often. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The city around us buzzed faintly. A siren in the distance, a flickering streetlight, the faint rumble of passing cars. I realized how close he was, how his cologne carried a hint of smoke and something darker. My pulse quickened, though I was not sure if it was fear or fascination. Finally, I said, I do not belong in your world. He took a step back, giving me space, but his gaze stayed locked on mine. No one ever does, he said. Until they do. He handed me a card, plain black, no name, just a single phone number. Call if you decide you want to stop being invisible. Then he turned and slid back into the car. The engine started with a soft growl, and the headlights flared briefly before melting back into the night. I stood there for a long time, the card trembling between my fingers. The wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of gasoline and rain. Part of me wanted to tear it up and forget the whole thing. But another part, the one that had stared into his eyes that night in the diner, whispered that this was not the end. When I finally went back upstairs, I placed the card on my kitchen table, next to the empty coffee mug from the night before. Its black surface seemed to absorb the light. I told myself I would not call. I told myself I still had a choice. But deep down, I already knew I was lying. He said he owed me a debt. I did not know he meant my freedom. I told myself I would not call. For 2 days, I stared at that black card like it was a loaded gun, sitting there on my kitchen table, daring me to touch it. Every hour that passed made it harder to resist. My mind replayed his voice, calm and deliberate, the way he had looked at me under the streetlight, like he already knew I would cave. On the third night, I did. The line rang only once before I heard him. I was starting to think you would never call, he said. You left me no reason to, I replied, though my voice betrayed more nerves than strength. You lost your job because of me, he said quietly. Let me make it right. There it was again, that tone, soft yet commanding, like he was doing me a favor I should not refuse. Against better judgment, I agreed to meet him. He said his driver would pick me up at 7. I told myself it was only dinner, that I was just going to hear what he had to say. Lies, all of it. The car that arrived was the same black one from that night, spotless, intimidating. The driver said nothing as we wound through the city. Every turn felt like a descent, away from everything I knew, toward something I could not name. When the car stopped, we were in front of a tall building wrapped in glass and shadow. Inside, the air smelled of expensive whiskey and silence. He was waiting for me at the top floor. No blood this time, no exhaustion, just precision. His suit fit like it was made of authority. He looked like a man who had never been told no and learned to live with that truth comfortably. You clean up well, he said, his eyes tracing me for a moment longer than polite. I was not trying to impress you, I said, though I felt the heat rising in my face. Good, he replied. I prefer honesty to performance. He gestured toward the table near the window. The city stretched below us, its lights flickering like distant promises. Dinner was already waiting, steak, wine, everything too elegant for someone who still lived off instant noodles and fear. I sat down carefully, unsure if I belonged there. You did not tell me your name, I said finally. He looked at me, the faintest trace of amusement crossing his face. Names can be dangerous in my world, but if it makes you more comfortable, you can call me Luca. Luca, I repeated, testing it like a secret. And what exactly is your world? He leaned back, his expression unreadable. One built on loyalty and silence. You would not like it. I already do not like it, I said, but my eyes betrayed me. There was something magnetic about him, something steady in his calm that made the chaos around him seem distant. He poured the wine, his movements deliberate. I need someone I can trust, he said. Someone outside my usual circle. Discretion matters more than experience. And you think that person is me? I know it is. His confidence unsettled me. I do not know anything about what you do, I said, forcing a small laugh. That is what makes you perfect, he replied. You helped me once without asking who I was. That kind of instinct is rare. I stared at the glass in my hand, the red liquid catching the light like blood. What would I have to do? Nothing you cannot handle, he said. Answer a few calls. Deliver a few things. Keep your eyes open and your mouth closed. And if I say no? He tilted his head, studying me. Then you walk out now, and we both pretend we never met. But if you say yes, he paused, his voice lowering, smoother now. Then you stop struggling against a world that has already decided to break you. You let me make it right. There was a pull in his words, dangerous and comforting all at once. I wanted to hate the way he spoke, like he understood me better than I understood myself. But I could not. For the first time in weeks, I felt seen. Not as a waitress. Not as a mistake. Just seen. Why me? I asked softly. His gaze did not waver. Because you are the only one who helped me without wanting something in return. People like that do not last long alone. The silence that followed was heavier than the air around us. Outside, rain began to fall, streaking down the glass like slow-moving tears. I do not belong here, I whispered. He smiled faintly. Maybe not, but you could. Something in his tone made the world tilt. I should have stood up, thanked him, and left. But instead, I stayed. The conversation shifted to lighter things, music, food, the city. He told stories that were half-truths and half-warnings, and I found myself laughing at things that were not funny, just to keep from asking what they really meant. By the time the plates were cleared and the rain had stopped, it was past midnight. The lights of the city reflected in his eyes, and for a moment, I saw not a man of power, but someone weary of carrying it. When I finally rose to leave, he walked me to the elevator. You should not worry, he said as the doors opened. I take care of what belongs to me. The words made my stomach twist. I wanted to ask if he already thought I did, but the doors slid shut before I could speak. That night, I lay in bed replaying every word, every look. I told myself it was only dinner, that I still had control. But deep down, I knew something had already shifted. I told myself I would only stay for dinner. I did not notice when it became a life. The next week unfolded like a dream I did not remember agreeing to have. Luca's driver started picking me up every morning at 9 sharp, taking me to an office that did not look like an office at all. Polished floors, tinted glass, men in tailored suits who never smiled and always seemed to be listening. They called him sir or boss, and they called me miss like I was something fragile that did not belong there but had somehow been allowed in. At first, I told myself it was temporary. I just answered phones, filed papers, made coffee, passed envelopes sealed too tightly to question. It was easy money, more than I had ever made. But beneath that calm surface, something darker pulsed. People came in looking nervous and left looking lighter, or heavier. And Luca's door, always closed, hid conversations that ended in silence when I passed by. His bodyguard, Marco, was the first to tell me about the rules. He was a mountain of a man with kind eyes that had seen too much. One morning, he leaned across my desk and said quietly, "Do not ask questions. Do not touch what you do not understand. And if Luca says stay, you stay. If he says go, you go. No matter what." I nodded, pretending to understand, but part of me still wanted to believe that maybe he was just a businessman with too many secrets. That illusion shattered 3 nights later. It was late. The others had gone home. I was filing reports in the small back office when I heard raised voices echoing down the hall. Luca's tone was calm, but beneath it was steel. I froze, instinct pulling me toward the sound instead of away from it. Through the half-open door, I saw him standing in front of a man I had never seen before. A man shaking so hard his hands could barely stay still. "I told you once," Luca said, his voice low, controlled. "And once is always enough." The man tried to speak, words tripping over each other. "Please, I just needed more time." Luca stepped closer. "Time is a currency I do not lend twice." Something in the way he said it made my stomach twist. There was no shouting, no chaos, just the kind of quiet that comes before something breaks. Then, with a subtle motion, Luca nodded to Marco. The bodyguard moved forward, and I looked away before I saw what happened. The sound that followed, a single dull thud, was enough. I backed away, breath uneven, my heart pounding in my ears. I wanted to run, to leave that place and never return. But my feet stayed planted until the silence settled again. When I turned around, Luca was standing at the end of the hall, looking directly at me. "You should not be here," he said softly. My voice caught. I was just— "I know," he interrupted. "You are curious. That is dangerous here." He walked toward me, each step unhurried. The closer he came, the heavier the air felt. "What you saw was not meant for you." "I did not see anything," I said quickly. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. Then we have no problem." But his eyes lingered, and I could not tell if he believed me or if he was giving me a chance to pretend. Later, in his office, he poured 2 glasses of scotch and handed me one. "You look pale," he said. "I am fine," I lied. He leaned against his desk. "You think I am a monster now." I wanted to deny it, but the words caught in my throat. "I think you are something I do not understand." He tilted his head slightly, as if that amused him. "Understanding is overrated. You helped me once because you saw pain, not power. That is why you are still here." I looked at him, really looked, at the way his hands were steady, but his eyes carried a weariness that power could not hide. "What did he do?" I asked before I could stop myself. Luca's jaw tightened. "He broke trust. That is all. In my world, that is everything." His tone was calm, but there was something almost sad beneath it. I realized then that his ruthlessness was not born from pleasure. It was discipline, a kind of moral code twisted by necessity. He lived by rules that had no forgiveness, and yet he looked at me as if he wanted to be forgiven for something. We drank in silence after that, the weight of unspoken truths filling the room. When I finally left, Marco walked me to the elevator. His voice was quiet when he said, "You are different. He sees that. Just be careful. It is not always a good thing to be seen by him." That night, I lay awake replaying the scene, trying to decide what frightened me more, the violence I had glimpsed, or the fact that part of me still felt drawn to him despite it. Luca's world was built on secrets and control, and I was standing at the edge, too far in to turn back, too afraid to fall. Before I fell asleep, his words echoed in my head, colder now, sharper than they had sounded in the moment. He said trust was earned. That night, I learned what it cost. Luca invited me to dinner the next evening. He said it casually, as if it were nothing, just a meal, just gratitude. But nothing about him ever felt casual. The restaurant was closed to the public that night. Candles flickered across every table, shadows dancing on marble walls, the kind of setting meant for something intimate or dangerous. When I arrived, he stood as though he had been waiting for hours, dressed in black, his tie undone just enough to seem human. "You are early," he said, with the faintest trace of surprise. "I was not sure if I should come," I admitted. "Then I am glad you did," he replied. "Most people do not risk what frightens them." The waiter appeared briefly, one of his men, I realized, and poured wine before disappearing again. I tried to steady my hands, but they betrayed me, trembling slightly as I lifted the glass. Luca noticed, of course. He noticed everything. "You are nervous," he said, his voice smooth but unreadable. "I am sitting across from a man who makes people disappear," I whispered before I could stop myself. For a moment, his expression froze. Then a small, almost rueful smile touched his lips. "And yet you came anyway." "I do not know why," I said. "Maybe I wanted to see if you were real. Or if the version of you I met that night in the booth was only an illusion." He leaned forward, eyes dark and steady. "The man you met bleeding in that booth was real. The man everyone else fears, he is real too. I just learned how to survive being both." There was something in his tone that felt almost like pain, a quiet admission buried beneath control. I wanted to ask more, but I also knew there were questions that could cost more than answers were worth. So instead, I asked, "Is that what all this is about? Survival?" He considered it for a moment. "No. Survival is easy. Living with what survival costs, that is the real punishment." The room fell silent. The kind of silence that hums in the air, heavy and electric. I could hear the city outside, faint sirens, distant laughter. And yet, inside that candlelit room, everything felt frozen in place. He changed the subject then, or tried to. "You worked hard at that diner," he said softly. "They were wrong to fire you." "They were right to be afraid," I answered. "You brought danger to my door, Luca." His name felt strange on my tongue, too familiar, too forbidden. He smiled faintly when I said it, as though the sound of it pleased him more than he wanted to admit. "Maybe," he said. "But danger is not always what it seems. Sometimes it looks like punishment when it is protection." "Protection from what?" I asked. "From others," he said, then added quietly, "and sometimes from yourself." I looked away, because the way he said it felt too close, too knowing. There was something magnetic about his calm, the way he seemed to hold power not by force but by sheer will. I wanted to hate him for it, but instead, I found myself leaning in without meaning to. The dinner stretched into hours. We spoke about everything and nothing, childhood memories we half remembered, music that made us feel something, the strange loneliness that comes with doing what you must instead of what you want. His laughter was rare, but when it came, it softened him completely. It was the kind of sound that made me forget who he was, if only for a moment. When dessert came, he pushed the plate toward me and said, "You should eat. You forget to take care of yourself when you worry." I looked at him, searching for irony, but found none. "You speak like you know me," I said. "I am learning," he replied. I could have left then. I should have. But when he reached across the table, his hand brushed mine, slow, deliberate, a question wrapped in silence. My breath caught. His skin was warm, steady, grounding. For a second, the world outside disappeared, the city, the danger, the rules. There was only that touch, quiet and terrifyingly human. He studied my reaction, his voice barely above a whisper. "You think I am the devil?" "I think," I said, "you are too good at pretending not to be." A shadow crossed his face, half amusement, half regret. "Maybe," he murmured. "But sometimes the devil just wants to be seen as a man." We did not speak after that. We sat there in the stillness, our hands resting too close, as if both of us were waiting for something neither was brave enough to name. When he finally stood, he offered to drive me home. I refused. I needed distance, air, space to breathe. But when I walked out into the cool night, I realized I could still feel the echo of his hand against mine. And that terrified me more than anything he had ever said. When he took my hand, the world felt quiet, and that terrified me. That night, the rain fell like it wanted to wash the city away. I remember standing at his balcony, watching the storm swallow the skyline, the glass trembling with every roll of thunder. Luca stood a few feet behind me, silent, a shadow in his own home. The air between us felt different, heavier, as if something was waiting to be said. He had called earlier that evening. His voice was quiet, strange. "Come over," was all he said. No explanation, no reason. Just that. And somehow I went, not because I trusted him, but because I was afraid of what it meant that I wanted to. When I turned around, he was staring at the floor, a half-empty glass of whiskey in his hand. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, and for the first time, I noticed the scars on his arms, thin lines, old, almost hidden. They looked like history written in silence. "You should not have come," he said finally. "Then why did you ask me to?" I replied. He laughed once, sharp, bitter. "Because I did not want to be alone. And that is exactly why you should have stayed away." Something in his voice cracked at the edges. I stepped closer, and he did not move away. His eyes were darker than usual, not from anger, but from something heavier. Grief, maybe. Or exhaustion. "I lost someone tonight," he said softly. I froze. "Someone close?" He nodded once. "He was one of the only people I trusted. A friend. My father made him swear to protect me when I was young. Tonight, I had to bury him." The words hit me harder than I expected. He spoke them like a confession, restrained, careful, but the pain bled through. "I am sorry," I whispered. "Do not be," he said, setting the glass down. "This is the life I chose. Or maybe the one chosen for me." The storm outside grew louder. Lightning flashed across his face, and for a moment, I saw the boy beneath the man, someone who had learned to build walls before he learned to dream. "Was it always like this for you?" I asked. The danger, the control, the fear? He leaned against the window, his voice low. My father ran this world before I did. I grew up in rooms filled with power and silence. Every lesson came with a bruise. Every promise came with a lie. By the time I was old enough to leave, I had nowhere else to go. His words felt like they were being dragged from a place he rarely visited. I wanted to reach for him, but something in me hesitated. The same something that knew pity could wound worse than truth. He looked at me then, really looked. You want to know why I keep you close? I swallowed hard. Yes, because when you helped me that night, you were not afraid of what I was. You were afraid of what I might become. And still you stayed. I did what anyone with a heart would have done, I said quietly. No, he murmured, shaking his head. Most people walk away from blood. You walked toward it. For a long moment we stood there, saying nothing. The thunder rolled again, but it sounded distant compared to the silence between us. Finally, he whispered, no one saves me. Not twice. I felt the weight of that sentence settle in the room. The kind of truth that leaves a mark. You do not have to be saved, I said. Maybe you just need someone who sees you. He smiled, but it was small and tired. You should not try to fix me. People who try to fix me end up broken. I am already cracked, I said before I could stop myself. Maybe that is why I am not afraid of you. His eyes softened then, something unreadable flickering behind them. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath against my skin. For a heartbeat, it felt like the world outside did not exist. Just the two of us, standing in the ruins of our choices. He reached out, his fingers brushing my face. It was not a lover's touch, not yet. It was something more fragile, a plea maybe. A reminder that even monsters crave gentleness. You should go, he whispered, before I make you part of this. But I did not move, because deep down I already was. When I finally left, the rain had stopped. The city smelled like something reborn, wet, electric, alive. I walked home with his voice echoing in my mind, and for the first time, I realized I was not just witnessing his walls fall. I was standing beneath the rubble of my own. I promised I would not try to fix him. I did not know he had already started breaking me. It was just past midnight when the knock came, hard, frantic, wrong. I had been half asleep, my mind still tangled in the echo of Luca's voice, when the sound tore through the silence. At first, I thought it was nothing, a drunk neighbor maybe. But then I saw the shadow under the door, and the quiet shape of blood spreading across the threshold. My chest tightened. I stepped back, heart pounding so loudly it felt like it filled the room. Then I heard it, a low groan, someone breathing, hurt. I almost called the police, but something inside me froze. Every instinct whispered that calling for help would only make things worse. The phone rang before I could move. It was him. Do not open the door, Luca's voice commanded, low and urgent. I swallowed hard. Luca, there is someone. I know, he cut in. My men are on the way. Stay away from the windows. His tone was calm, but beneath it there was something raw, fear or fury. Maybe both. Who is out there? I asked. Someone who should not be, he said after a pause. Someone sending a message. Before I could respond, a crash shook the hallway, metal, glass, and the unmistakable sound of footsteps running. I dropped the phone. The air smelled like iron. I pressed myself against the wall, breath shallow, every nerve screaming. Moments later, the door burst open. Two of his men entered, faces hard, guns drawn. Behind them came Luca, coat drenched from the rain, eyes darker than I had ever seen them. He did not say a word at first. He just looked at me, at the fear on my face, the trembling in my hands, and something in him seemed to break. He turned toward the hallway. Get it cleaned up, he ordered. I caught a glimpse before they closed the door. A body lying half in shadow, blood pooling across the worn floorboards. Luca, my voice shook. Who is that? He stepped closer, his jaw tight. Someone who thought hurting you would hurt me more. I could not breathe. The words felt like ice. I told you I wanted no part of this. And yet you are in it, he said quietly. Because the moment you helped me, they noticed. You became a name on their list. Tears blurred my vision. So what now? Do I run? Hide. He reached out, his hand brushing my arm, steady, unshakable. You stay where I can find you. He said I was safe. Then someone screamed his name outside my door. I could feel it before I knew it. The shift, the silence that no longer felt safe. After the night of blood, something in Luca changed. He became distant, guarded again, like the storm had forced him back behind his walls. The calls came less often, the visits shorter. When he did appear, It was always after midnight, always with shadows clinging to him like guilt. I tried to tell myself it was the danger, that he was protecting me by keeping me apart. But when the truth came, it arrived quietly, not through him, but through a voice I had not heard in months. My old manager. He called from an unknown number, his tone hesitant. "You should know something," he said. "That night you were fired, it wasn't random. Someone asked for your name before the shift even ended. Said you helped a man who shouldn't have lived. A man named Luca DeRossi." The room spun. "What are you saying?" I asked. "He wanted to know about a delivery driver," he continued. "Your brother." My throat closed. My brother. The only family I had left, the one who disappeared 2 weeks later without explanation. When Luca came to see me that evening, I was already waiting by the window, the truth burning a hole through my chest. He looked tired, worn, but still impossibly composed. "You should not have left your apartment," he said softly. "Tell me the truth," I said. He froze. "About what?" "About my brother," I said. "You knew him, didn't you? The night you showed up at that diner, it was not an accident. You were looking for me." His silence was answer enough. I stepped closer, voice trembling. "You used me." He shook his head once, slow, deliberate. "I needed access," he admitted. "Your brother worked for someone who wanted me dead. I had to find out who he was meeting. You were the only connection I had." My chest felt hollow. "So everything, the dinner, the promises, it was all a game to you?" He moved closer, his expression sharp with pain. "It stopped being a game the moment you touched me that night in the diner. I did what I had to do to keep you alive." "Alive?" I repeated, voice breaking. "You lied to me, Luca. You used me to find him." His jaw clenched. "And I found him dead," he said quietly. "Because I was too late." The words struck like a blade. I stumbled back, shaking my head. "You think that makes it better? You think betrayal feels softer just because you regret it?" He reached for me, but I stepped away. His hand fell to his side, and that was when I saw it. The black metal glint beneath his coat. A gun. He swore it was for my protection, but I saw the gun in his hand. I left before sunrise, taking nothing but the clothes on my back and the pieces of myself he had not yet taken. The streets were empty, washed pale by morning fog, and for the first time in months, I felt the illusion of freedom. Every step away from him was supposed to make it easier to breathe, but it only made the silence heavier. I found a small motel off the highway, the kind where the walls smelled like smoke and loneliness. I paid in cash, used a fake name, and sat by the window until the light changed from gray to gold. Every sound outside, a car door, footsteps, a siren, made my heart race. I told myself it was fear. But deep down, I knew it was something else. Withdrawal. Luca had been danger, yes, but he had also been presence. A voice in the dark. A steady breath beside the chaos. Without him, everything felt too still, too ordinary. I tried to remember who I was before that night in the diner, but all I found was a girl who believed good deeds did not come with a price. Days passed. I changed motels, switched buses, tried to stay invisible. I threw away my phone, burned his letters, deleted every trace of him. But his words stayed. "No one saves me." Not twice. I hated that I remembered them like a prayer. One night, I caught my reflection in the mirror, pale, tired, eyes hollow. I almost did not recognize myself. I had run so far that even my own shadow seemed foreign. Yet, when I closed my eyes, I could still see his tall, calm, dangerous, inevitable. I told myself I was free, that this was what survival looked like. But freedom without peace is just another kind of prison. And I was still serving my sentence. Then, on the 5th morning, as I drank weak motel coffee and tried to pretend my hands were not shaking, I saw the news playing on the dusty television in the corner. The reporter's voice was calm, detached, but the name wasn't. Luca DeRossi, suspected in the disappearance of rival associates, remains at large. My heart stopped. His picture filled the screen, the same face I once touched in the dark, now framed by flashing police lights. I thought I had escaped him, until the news said his name again. It was raining again the night he came back. Not the gentle kind, but the kind that lashes against the earth as if trying to erase every sin ever made beneath it. I had moved twice since the last time I saw him. Changed my name. Worked in a roadside diner that smelled like grease and old coffee. I had done everything I could to disappear. But trouble, I had learned, does not forget those who once opened their door to it. The knock came just before midnight. One sound. Then another. Slow. Heavy. I froze. every muscle remembering the fear that had lived in my bones since the night I left him. I walked to the door and pressed my ear against it. Nothing. Then faintly a voice low cracked familiar. Please. It was him. I opened the door, and the world narrowed to the sight of Luca, drenched in rain, blood darkening his coat, eyes glassy but alive. For a second I could not move. It felt like a ghost had come to collect the part of me that still belonged to him. He swayed forward, and I caught him before he fell. His weight was heavy, his breath uneven, his skin cold against my hands. You should have let me stay gone, he muttered as I pulled him inside. You would have died on the doorstep, I said. I could not do that again. I laid him on the couch, the same faded fabric that had held all my sleepless nights since I ran. His blood seeped through the cushions. My hands shook as I pressed a towel against his side. Who did this to you? I asked. He exhaled slowly, his voice a ghost of itself. The same people who came for you. They finally found me first. I wanted to hate him, to turn away, to let the consequences of his world swallow him whole. But as I looked at him lying there, the storm raging outside, I realized something terrifying. I no longer knew how to be the version of myself who could walk away. You should call someone, I whispered. He smiled faintly. You are someone. I bit down on the tremor in my throat. You need a doctor. I need time, he said. And a place they cannot find me. Just for tonight. There was a long silence between us, filled only by rain and the sound of our breathing. His eyes met mine, tired, unguarded. You hate me, he said softly. I shook my head. I hate what you did. But hate is not the same as nothing. He winced, his hand brushing mine. The same hand that once taught me how to fear, how to feel. You saved me once, he said. You should not make that mistake again. I pressed harder on his wound. It was never a mistake. He closed his eyes, and for a moment, I thought he had drifted away. I sat beside him, watching his chest rise and fall. Every second felt like a memory trying to repeat itself. Why did you come back? I finally asked. He opened his eyes, gaze unfocused. Because there are debts that cannot be paid with blood, he said. Only with goodbye. The words settled between us like ash. I did not understand them, not fully, until he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small folded paper, stained with rain and blood. He held it out to me. Your brother's name, he whispered, and the man who ordered his death. You deserve the truth, even if it kills me to give it. My hands trembled as I took it. Why now? Because I owed you something real before I disappeared, he said. Because you looked at me like I was still human, even when I wasn't. Tears stung my eyes. I wanted to speak, but the words caught somewhere between anger and mercy. He reached for my wrist, his grip weak but sure. Do not follow me this time, he murmured. Do not try to find me. The only way you win is if you forget. I shook my head. You know I cannot. He smiled, soft, resigned. Then at least pretend. Outside, thunder broke across the sky like the city itself was grieving. I sat there beside him until his breathing steadied, until the dawn began to creep through the window. When I finally looked down at him again, he was asleep, or maybe something beyond it. I touched his hand one last time, my voice barely a whisper. You said I saved you once, I said. This time, you asked me to forget you. But I knew I never would. The rain had stopped by morning, but the world still looked bruised. The storm had left the streets glistening, quiet, the kind of silence that feels like the earth is holding its breath. Luca was still there when I woke, sitting by the window, his shirt torn, his wound wrapped in my faded bedsheet. He looked different in the daylight, not powerful, not untouchable. Just a man who had run out of places to hide. He did not turn when I spoke. You should be resting. I have rested long enough, he said softly. I have lived too many lives built on fear. It is time to end one of them. Something in his tone made me rise. Where will you go? He smiled faintly. Somewhere I can disappear. Somewhere my name does not matter. I stepped closer. And what about me? Do I just pretend none of this happened? He finally looked at me then, really looked, and I saw it in his eyes. Regret. Admiration. Something that almost looked like love, if love could exist between two people who had broken each other. You made me human again, he said quietly. That is something no one else ever did. Tears burned at the back of my throat. Then stay. Let that be enough. He shook his head. You and I were never built for peace. You deserve a life untouched by my shadows. He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek, the softest goodbye I had ever known. For a moment, I wanted to hold on, to make him promise something impossible. But promises had always been the most dangerous thing between us. "I will never forget you," I whispered. "That is exactly why I have to go," he said. Outside, the sky began to pale, that fragile light before sunrise when everything feels suspended between night and day. He stood, straightened his coat, and opened the door. The cold air rushed in, sharp and clean. He hesitated once, then said without looking back, "You saved me, even when I did not deserve saving." My heart clenched, but I said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. He walked away before sunrise, like he always did. But this time, I did not wait for him to come back. It has been months since the night he walked away. The city moved on, as it always does. Sirens still wail, secrets still trade hands in the dark, and people still whisper about the man they call the devil. His name lingers in conversations no one wants to own, in stories told behind closed doors. They say he vanished. Some think he died. Others swear he is still out there, watching, waiting. I do not look for him anymore. I do not need to. His absence became a part of me, carved deep enough to change the shape of who I am. The girl who once worked night shifts in a diner, counting tips and swallowing fear, does not exist anymore. She disappeared the night she opened her door to a bleeding stranger and learned what it costs to care for someone who lives in the dark. Sometimes I still pass that diner on my way to work. It has a new name now, brighter lights, cleaner windows. But when I look through the glass, I remember everything, the smell of burnt coffee, the sound of rain on the roof, and the way he looked at me that first night, half alive and half ashamed. I used to think that was where my life ended. Now I know it was where it began. People still ask me if I regret helping him. I used to wonder that too. I used to replay every moment, every choice, asking what might have happened if I had just walked away. But I do not ask anymore. Because the truth is, kindness was never my weakness. It was my rebellion. In a world built on fear and silence, I chose to see a human where others saw a monster. Luca once told me that survival is easy. It is living with what survival costs that breaks you. Maybe he was right. But what he never understood was that love, even the kind born in danger, teaches you more about who you are than safety ever could. I used to think he ruined me, that his world infected mine. But now, when I see his name in the papers or hear it whispered like a curse, I feel nothing but calm. Because he did not destroy me. He stripped away everything false, every illusion of safety, every borrowed version of myself, until all that was left was truth. And the truth is simple. I am not the girl who helped the devil. I am the woman who learned to walk through fire and smile at the smoke. They still whisper his name like a warning. I just smile. Because I know the truth. The devil did not ruin me. He revealed me.